Our next section is coming in, and EFMD's Nishit Jain is going to present the point of view of EFMD Global. And Nishit, you're around?
Hi.
Yeah, hi, Nishit. Sorry,
I was actually muted, so.
Yeah, I know. There was a little bit of hassle there. So you're now okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm
all right. Okay. So you're coming in now?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Only my face is sort of distorted now. Right now, I think issues it keeps happening. What you were talking about kids, handling this is something is not happening to us, I suppose. These things do happen. Okay, I'm back here. So, yeah, over to you, Nishit.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tathatri. Again for bringing me in on this. Let me try to share the screen if I can. So, I guess it's working. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen. Your screen is up.
All right. So, thanks to all the participants and thanks to all the other accrediting agencies. Good to see you, Mark, even though it's virtually. And hope to see you soon again in a couple of months as we go further in the post-vaccine era, as I would say. So without wasting much time, I'll just take a little bit time to introduce what EFMD is and what it does. EFMD is one of the most credible and a very large organization with a very strong global footprint. I think global is a word which is natural to us. And today, I think we've all realized that globalization is something which cannot be, contained, irrespective of whatever the policies of the governments are, because people are far more, entrepreneurial to connect, and and in the end of the day, I think we are all social animals. So we need to connect, we need to meet, we need to learn from each other. So in that context, just thinking on the lines of reimagining the business education is what I was asked to talk about. I'll just quickly, divide the presentation into two parts. So first one being a little bit orientation as to what EFMD is and what it does. And the second one more specifically on to what the future of the education or the business education in future is likely to be. So let me see if I can, okay. Yeah, so EFMD is headquartered in Belgium. And one of the primary services about nearly 5 decades ago when it was set up was to act as a bridge between the corporate world and the business management community. So management community is the business schools and the corporate world, because both have a very strong relevance and both have to work hand in hand for things to go further. Some of the core values is EFMD works with a lot of governments, a lot of organizations globally across different set of products and offerings that we have. We have a very diverse set of engagement practices. So while we do accredit, we also certify, we work on projects, which I'll talk later during the presentation. We are very responsible and inclusive, which is also one of the important SDGs, which has been now lately highlighted more by the UN, but EFMD has been practicing this from the very beginning. So while on one side we accredit, we also do a lot of hand-holding to institutions from the countries which cannot afford or cannot identify the best practices because of their environmental challenges or structural challenges or awareness. So we set up teams around them to mentor them, help them come up to a higher quality, and also, become a more impactful player globally. We are excellence driven in everything that EFMD delivers. I think that's something which is very core. So while EFMD has several accreditations, excellence is something which is again right at the heart of anything that we do. This is something, just a quick representation of a global footprint of what EFMD currently looks like. As I said earlier, we have different services for our members. So quality services is where the accreditation falls in. You may be familiar with EQUIS or earlier EPAS, now EFMD accredited, and BSIS, which is an impact system measuring tool, which leads to a certification, CLIP accreditation. So I'll talk about all of those. So, but what I wanted to highlight at this point was quality services is, as you can see, is nearly, I would say, just about a third of the EFMD activities. So EFMD does a lot more than just accreditation, which is very important for those who would like to sort of go into the accreditation or associate with the EFMD in future. Need to understand that accreditation is one of the ends, but I think you can really benefit from far greater activities, which is networking forums that are created. International advocacy, which is obviously working on projects with the governments, and also on international, doctoral programs that we have run. We run a lot of training programs and several other knowledge services for faculty, for leadership programs that we co-create and also run from time to time. Just to give you a quick snapshot, as I said, these are some of the activities and events that EFMD does around the world. Even though, what I would like to highlight, that even though we have been contained in our mobility due to the current scenario, but I think none of our activities has stalled by any means. So all of these, in fact, conferences and workshops that you see are being conducted online. And soon we hope that they'll move into the hybrid mode and eventually also providing a full access face-to-face mode as the situation improves in mobility. These are some of the key accreditations. EQUIS, which is an institutional accreditation, has nearly 200 schools accredited globally. Institutional accreditation means that everything that an institution offers would be accredited once you are part of the EQUIS accreditation. Then you also have EFMD accredited programs just under in the pink. So this means that now while the EQUIS goes horizontally, EFMD accredited goes vertically. So it's a deep dive into a program. So you can handpick one or two or a few programs within the portfolio of programs that your institution offers and have that accredited in isolation. Earlier, the reason it was EPAS and now why it has been EFMD accredited, because it was felt that EFMD represents a far stronger depth. So I think it really, today, I think what has really changed, I would say, is the fact that earlier a school which used to be EPAS accredited could not be an EQUIS accredited, because the moment you become EQUIS, then you used to lose the EPAS, which means that either you are an institutional accredited or you are a program accredited. The two could not coexist, and there were internal deficiencies in the system, because you can only go as much when you go on the breadth, but you can not go in the depth of a program and really understand the nuts and bolts and what makes the program really good and what is the quality aspect of that program, which eventually translates into the institutional philosophy. So today, I think I'm proud to inform that institution which is an EQUIS accredited can go for an EFMD accredited program. So there are about close to 20 schools which have already started going into the both having already acquired EQUIS, now going for an EFMD accredited, and there are another, I think, close to, I mean, as you already see, about 120 plus schools which are program accredited today, but maybe in future they want to enhance their portfolio by having more programs or institutional accreditation. EDAF is another service that EFMD offers to mentor institutions. So institutions which do not have the requisite internal means or the strategic look out of how to grow and how to benchmark, how to be a global institution, how to enhance quality on things that they deliver. That's where EDAF comes in very handy. And EDAF is a mentorship process which is not an accreditation, but it can lead to an accreditation should an institution want, and but it is an independent process of an accreditation. I mean, a school which goes through the EDAF is not necessarily mandated that they will be accredited by EFMD accredited or EQUIS as a consequence of that. But what our hope, what our experience has shown us that most schools which have been through the EDAF route have been far more acceptable and far better on their pace to get one of the accreditations from EFMD or another accreditation for that matter once they have been through the EDAF, because they already have a very solid network within that institution. They have very strong processes, and they are now in a mindset of how to benchmark. There is a very good culture which has been set forth in the institution, which is what an accreditation creates actually. CLIP is another accreditation which is basically for companies, so corporates which are having a global footprint. I mean, you might have heard of global learning systems wherein corporates get people on board and they train them globally for their employees for training and development. So we accredit those corporate universities which are internalized for any corporate. Just to give you names, I mean, Microsoft Worldwide, Siemens Worldwide, Alstom Worldwide, Daimler Chrysler, and several others, I mean, are accredited on a worldwide level by CLIP. EOX. In fact, while online has been now talk of the town, but EFMD has been accrediting courses online for over now close to nearly 5 years. And this is a product which allows you to identify how you can deliver better online. How do you benchmark with the best online delivery, and so on and so forth. And BSIS is impact measurement system for the business school. So today, I think more and more relevance is being identified with the context of SDGs. But EFMD started this close to about over a decade ago, wherein we identified that a business school's role is not just to produce high quality graduates. It is also about impact it creates onto the society, onto the corporates, onto the region that they operate in. And that's what led to creation of what is BSIS. And I mean, there are several schools globally which have identified themselves to go along with the BSIS, and it is rapidly picking up pace. There are several in the pipeline. So looking back at the topic, I mean, of the future, or how do we reimagine the business schools? I think one of the most important roles has to be played by the leader. The leader is somebody who could, I mean, think and create strategies, create ways to get over, which is something, you know, a challenging scenario. And for that, I think what we really need leaders who are strategically savvy. When I say strategically savvy, I think what we're trying to hint is the fact that they need to be hands-on onto the technology. They need to be, I mean, be able to identify that what sort of new competition that is coming in, because the competition is not really from one well-established player to a less established player any longer. The competition is, the definition of competition is far wider now. Nobody who was there in a particular area can now become a competitor. people who may just offer a few courses can also be a competitor. So there can be a very wide range of that, and a leader needs to really think through that where they are trying to add value, and how can they, capture the attention and differentiate from the others and still get their way further. Also, an organizational savvy is somebody who can build a very strong culture. I think culture is very crucial, a culture of entrepreneurship, culture of innovation, a culture of trying to identify what is right. Because as institutions, as faculty, we obviously get, plenty of requests depending on what geography you are in. And you really need to identify and handpick what is the right thing, where you should be investing, where you should be picking, what you should be identifying yourself with as an institution. So you need to be able to organize, have robust processes in place. And effective self-management, I think needless to mention, in today's age, the time we are in currently, we need to identify the fact that we will burn out if we are not able to manage ourselves well, because energy is limited. We need to be able to communicate. We need to be able to tell effectively and efficiently what we really need to. So we need to be very efficient in what we do. We need to plan our time. I'm sure, today with the number of requests we all receive for the webinars, for the other kind of activities, it really burns you out, it drains you out. So you really need to plan that well. And lifelong learning is something which, all of us has been talking about going on and again, but then this is something we can't discount. So we need to inculcate the habit of, picking up on the newer areas which we are not competent on, but being able to do that. And this is what will really help us if we put this all together. I think if we are able to practice well what we are trying to say, and then think through, reflect back, I think it will certainly help all of us go further. Another area of, change, which we all know, is the technology. Technology is no longer, a forced asset to be put into any place. I think now it's the primary asset. An institution of the future, to my mind, will be built around technology more importantly than anything else. So while you are having great faculty, but how do you communicate with your students, with your other stakeholders, with your other faculty colleagues? I think technology is going to play a very important role. And it is, earlier we used to say that, okay, we are good, it's good to be a specialist. But while we need to know a particular area, I think the knowledge of general knowledge, the knowledge of different areas, different non-connected areas for that matter, would not only help us perform better, it will also help us think better. It will help our left brain, right brain work together, and we can think critically, we can think better, we can think larger, and we can be more impactful. So I think in that context also, it is very essential that we do not just limit ourselves to a particular area of learning. And then E3, as we say, the explore, experience, and experiment. I think this should be the new motto, that how we are inculcating habits in our curriculum, which is probably a little bit lighter, so that people can, explore rather than just following and reading and writing. I think we need to give them time to explore. We need to just give them, some cue points, but then after they should explore. They need to also experience by virtue of certain life projects, by working on companies, by industry fellowships, maybe even starting their own enterprise. So even while they're at the institution. And experiment, I think the ability for them to take challenges, ability for them to fail and still rise. These are some values that we need to, again, bring into the teaching system of the future school. Only then we can make a difference. And lastly, I would say that, I would not say lastly, I think one of the additional points is also the global collaborations. I think today the companies that we connect with as in business school need not be just in the vicinity. We need to think broader, we need to think across the boundaries, and need to also explore how we can connect with the companies outside of the geography that we are in. Because globalization, as I mentioned earlier in my initial remarks, cannot be limited I think today people are smarter, industries are smarter, so they always find ways and means. So in spite of high taxes in some countries, it's not that the business will exit. Business will find another way to collaborate and connect with partners. They may launch a new brand in that market, which may be, produced locally, but then they restore the IP, and that's where they make money, and that's what smart business is all about. So we really need to think through, that how, in spite of all the challenges, we need to be able to run, leap, and go ahead. The new education technology will also humanize education is very important, because there'll be a whole lot of change, as I just talked about, that how quickly one can change paradigms, so how quickly one can change between technologies, from flipped classroom to digital boards to probably a Cisco telepresence to Zoom or maybe another online platform, and again back into the classroom setting. What is also important for this to take note of the fact that the future classrooms will not be just simply a blackboard on one side with the teacher in front and students on the other. It could be a very different structure. It could be a meeting room. It could be some square rooms, some triangular rooms. I don't know. It could be very innovative to make the discussion happen, to make more personalized attention. There may be more than one teacher. You never know. So it could be a use of technology. We may have a technology and another robot. So, there could be many, many interesting models that may emerge as a consequence of this. So, to conclude, I would say that, some of the features of the future business school would be something to learn from a liquid learning experience. That role of a professor is very liquidified, in the sense that they need to move between classroom to maybe a teaching space, to another online space, to offline space, even working from home for sometimes, and using mobile for certain things, even able to track data. So it's a different professor. So the professor of current age may not be, suitably adequate, if not skilled up for the new age skills. Experience obviously is a key. There is no brainer. People who can transform themselves very quickly. I think the word quickly would be very key, because while you can learn, I think you need to also be cognizant of the time, because time is not forever. You need to be able to execute. And there has to be a humanities, I think, which I must also acknowledge the fact that in the new education policy in India, I think it has been a strong reference to that humanities and social sciences will play a very important role in creating a holistic graduate, as opposed to just technical or a management graduate. And lifelong learning is something we all talk about. And I think there has been a science which talk about the fact that there are neurons and they need to be exercised continuously. Therefore, as we become higher up in the role that we do in the corporate, we need to come back to the table, the drawing board, or the learning board rather, I would say, wherein we need to exercise those neurons and try to learn. And I'm pretty confident that the new age millennium, which are going to graduate in the coming years, would have that sort of a thing. And it's a matter of opportunity, and also packaging for us institutions, that how we can sort of deliver it and connect with them in the lifelong learning space. So with that, of course, I can go on and on, but I will just probably limit my scope here, and happy to take questions as needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nishit. It has been a brilliant exposition, especially the human aspects that you talked about. A lot of us are asking all kinds of questions, because things have really changed completely. And in the morning's panel, when all, including you, all of you are talking about that the change that has happened is irreversible, and people really have to learn to understand the way forward. And from this point of view, it is going to be a very, very interesting kind of future that we would expect to happen. And I want to, I have to basically sum up this thing by, our conference, for the first day conference, to first of all thank all of you for a brilliant exposition in terms of the the theme that we had put to basically saying that we should need a cutting edge quality strategy for reimagining MBA education. It is definitely time for reimagining MBA education. That's something that is my own takeaway. And there has been a brilliant summing up by Olin on